Hello, microphone check. Can you hear me okay?
Yep, can hear you fine.
Okay,
Yep.
great. Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Mhm. Tell me about what's behind you. It's beautiful.
Oh, yeah, yeah. I'm just working on a piece here. I just put a second glaze on it to try and darken it up. It was a little too bright, but just kind of like this guy. He's like wandering, pressing over a hill, kind of finding his way.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
It's going to be beautiful.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, yeah. It's really shiny right now from the glaze, but
Yeah, but the atmosphere is so lovely.
yeah. Well, thank you. I'll get a
Good for
little light.
you.
Yeah, thank you. It's in progress. So this is just the first layer and then some glazes. So it's going.
And when you painted the figure, did you paint the figure from life?
Yeah, yeah. I have a mirror that I have right over here.
That's why I asked, because I could see it.
Yeah, yeah.
So is that you? Is that your body?
Yeah, it is.
Good for you.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. It's all a work in progress, you know?
Yeah, that's what life is, right?
Oh, yeah. Tell me about it.
My daddy always used to say, if it doesn't kill you, it just makes you stronger.
Yeah, I believe that for sure.
Mm. Do you keep a sketchbook?
Sometimes, usually for like my ideas for larger compositions, I always kind of sketch them out, but sketching is a skill that I never really mastered. For some reason, like I can paint and it looks good, but like when I sketch, it's never that great. So it's something that I've been trying to work on. So
Yeah, I'm in a class now with a group called Morbid Anatomy,
yeah,
and the
sounds
woman,
fun.
it's great. The woman who leads the group is a sculptor who
Oh,
makes,
good.
and her job for a living is she makes the anatomical wax models for museums and restores them of surgical operations and flayed bodies.
Wow, that's actually pretty cool.
Isn't that neat?
Wow. Yeah. Oh, wow.
Yeah, I'll share her name in the chat because she's just at least you might want to follow her because she's just
Oh, okay.
she's really neat. And the reason I asked you about a sketchbook is because the class I'm taking is daily sketchbook practice, and I really struggle with it because when I wake up in the morning, I don't want to do it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I understand that for sure.
Yeah, but I do it anyway. But I don't want to.
Yeah, yeah. I know what you mean.
Yeah. Well, Nicholas, are you here?
Hello, I am here.
There he is.
I'm having a little bit of technical difficulty here with this PDF, so I think maybe I'm gonna wait with it and I'll send it to you guys afterwards.
Well, that's exciting.
Sounds
But
good to me.
it's
Yeah.
the sort of first
Yeah.
draft of this like portrait blocking guide. So I've
Ooh,
been
nice.
trying to refine it a little bit, trying to make it better for you guys. But I figured it's been too long now. I'm excited to share it. I want to share it with you. So I'm just gonna share with you the rough draft, and then I can improve it as we go. And
Yeah.
I'm sure your guys' feedback will help me to get it into a better condition as well.
Sounds good.
So let me. What I can do is I'll screen share it for you guys during this call though. That way you can at least get the overview. All right. Well, hello, everybody.
Hola.
How's
Good
it
to
going?
see you all. How's everybody doing?
Good, good.
Good. Eric, Sabina, hello. Sabina, welcome.
Hi.
Christine, Robin, hello. Sonika joining us all the way from South Africa.
Wow.
Hello, everyone.
And who else we got here? See, Hank, are you here? Chloe. Good to see you all. Well, what I have for you today is this first draft of the portrait blocking guide. So the idea with this is to basically just give a simple visual illustration of how I like to approach the portrait blocking, or this kind of early stage proportioning, trying to get likeness, all that good stuff. It's kind of I consider it like the first 15 to 20 minutes of drawing, something like that. And obviously that's kind of with a time limit in mind, you know, during our drawing competitions at the Nerdrum School, for example, where you only have 60 minutes to make the portrait. So that's pretty quick. It's not like I would necessarily expect that out of everyone, especially I know some people here are, you know, relatively more beginner. So it's something you develop, but I still think it's very valuable to be able to see, you know, visually how to simplify and break things down into more foundational components. And with that, I had an idea which I wanted to kind of run by you guys, see your thoughts, and maybe brainstorm a little bit here. You know, this doesn't have to be super formal. I didn't exactly plan like a whole structure for today, but I wanted to brainstorm and see what you guys thought about doing a sort of block-in boot camp. That's what I'm calling it. So the idea would be a series of live calls and kind of practices or exercises where we could call as a group and we could work on, you know, specific things to kind of go through this block-in process. And then during that time, you know, you'll have something to work on your own, and we'll record it, of course. So anybody who can't make it to the live events, then it's recorded for them. But then the goal is to basically gain a solid grasp of this portrait block-in stage throughout the course of that block-in bootcamp. And I don't know, I kind of toyed around with some different timelines in my head. I would like to do like a 30-day thing, but I think maybe that's a little bit too much to start out with. So I was thinking maybe something like 5 to 7 days could be a good place for us to start. And that way, you know, it's not too big of a commitment for anybody. Everybody should be able to kind of make that happen and spend, you know, 30 minutes to an hour each day to kind of work on that. Even if you can't make it live, it's not a crazy amount of time. It's not a very long-term commitment either. So yeah. Do you guys have any thoughts about that? Anyone? Feel free
Well,
to
I'll
just
just
jump
say
in.
I would be very happy to go a longer distance, but
Okay.
in other words, maybe 14 days, because that's halfway between, you know, 30 sort of anyway. But I defer to the wishes of the group because I usually overdo it anyway.
Me too. Me too. And that's what I was thinking too, is like it could easily be turned into something longer as well.
I mean, I would be happy to do it every single day, but not everybody is retired.
Yeah, true.
Yeah. I think 2 weeks is a good compromise. I think right smack in the middle. I don't think it's too much of a commitment. I mean, you have to kind of think at that point, if you're worried about time and commitment, then you got to think about what your larger goals are, and if you can even meet them, you know, if you can't dedicate 30 minutes to an hour every day, then you probably won't meet your goals anyway. So you kind of have to take that into consideration. So
Fair point. Fair point. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I was kind of thinking with it too, is it could be maybe a good way to also have some accountability. I know some people really struggle to just like kind of know what to do or when to practice, that kind of thing. And that was kind of my idea with it, is like, well, we're here with the whole group. So it doesn't have to be, something where you're out on your own and trying to figure it out. It's just kind of
Mhm.
a nice group setting where we can all kind of push together.
Yeah, I think that's really helpful. And I just to the group, take me with a grain of salt, okay? Because A, I'm retired, and B, I'm willing to do anything to paint like Rembrandt. Anything. I mean, if I have to draw upside down with my toes, I will do it. And if I have to accept dogma, I will do it. So take me with a grain of salt, put that filter on, and say, yes, Diana, that's nice, but we don't want to do that. Okay. Enough said.
Love that attitude, Diana. I love it.
Mhm. Yeah.
All right, so it sounds like everybody's on board. I saw Christine put a thumbs up too. So I think Christine is also interested in that. Christine, I think that would be good for you as well with what we talked about drawing. I think that's for a lot of people probably useful as well. And just to give a little context, what we talked about was that she wanted to loosen up a little bit more with her drawing and painting techniques, and to get a little bit more of that kind of rough, loose Corriere or Rembrandt type effect, where you've got kind of this atmospheric quality. So I think for a lot of people that would be good practice as well, to maybe play around with some of the Conte techniques and learn more about that during this process. All right. Well, it sounds like yeah, everybody else, you're good with any timeline, Sonika? You're good with any timeline?
I'm okay. I just think Diana would have to help me with my homework.
With what?
She can do
what?
half my work for me. You can help me with my homework.
Oh, you don't want me to help you. It'll come out looking weird. Ask Nick.
That's okay.
Robin, what do you think?
I'm good. A bit nervous about 30 minutes to an hour a day because I work
Okay.
full time, but I think I can do it. Challenge is on.
Challenges, I love it. All right. I will keep that in mind too. Maybe I can offer some different time increments as well for everybody. That way it's a little bit more flexible. Like I know Diana's ready to go full 8 hours. We can work full time just drawing. So maybe I could offer some different increments, like, hey, here's 15 to 30 minute practice versus here's 30 to an hour, or here's what you do if you want to just go all in. So I think that could be maybe a good solution to offer some different options. Sabina, do you have any thoughts?
I think I'm okay with what you suggested with the 14 days and yeah, half an hour to an hour. I'm okay with that.
Awesome. All right. Very good. Well, maybe I will get prepared here to share my screen. Cover up the secret documents. Okay.
I don't know. I only joined for the CQ documents. If you're going to cover them up, I'm leaving.
I should say the secret documents that are not interesting. As far as the portrait block-in, you're getting the
And
good
why
stuff
are they
here.
secret?
That's right.
I don't know. I'm just having fun, I guess. There wasn't really anything, but sometimes you got to minimize some windows. All right. Here we go. So obviously this is Canva. I don't know if there's like a presentation mode. I don't know. I'm a little bit worried about just messing the whole thing up. So I'm just going to do it like this. But what I will say is, in the future, this is going to be an ebook. So you guys will be able to actually download
great.
this and like scroll through it. And I want to also really develop this into something much more handy and practical and actually print it out. So I know some people here were interested in that, and that's what I'm kind of working towards with this, is really like a little mini book you could keep in the studio and use for reference. So that way, if you want to follow this, or if you want to kind of turn it into your own thing, you've just got it there for reference. Okay, Hank, going to catch up at a later date. I'm busy with a project running to April. Thanks for now. Okay, sounds great, Hank. Yeah, so that's yeah, something else I will say is that the idea for the block-in, for everybody who's in on the live cohort, because I know some people are probably watching this now as a recording, those will be recorded as well. So that way everybody will have access, even, you know, if you're busy with work, whatever, you can kind of follow on your own timeline and make it work according to your schedule too. So just to be clear about that for Hank and anyone else wondering. All right, so this is the portrait blocking guide. I don't know if should I read everything? There's kind of some like text that I wrote to go along with these. So I don't know if I should read it literally, or we'll see how it flows. But the idea here is to create a visual. That's kind of the key. It's visual. It's not necessarily literal. It's not something which you find exactly in the portrait, or which I'm always putting exactly on my canvas. But this is like an example visually of what I'm looking for. So this is kind of what I'm seeing in my mind's eye, so to speak. And the idea is that this is all based on the underlying skull structure. So I actually have two documents for you guys here today. This one is just looking at the skull. And I think this is important because, well, we all have skulls under our faces, and therefore there's some commonalities that you can find with any portrait. And there's a real simplification that I've found helpful personally to kind of get to the core of this. So this is the purpose. I basically said this, but the key here, it's just a visual aid, guys. It's not like anything which is a rigid set of rules. You have to follow this exactly. But this is what I found personally helpful through my years, you know, working with live portraits, studying the masters, trying to figure out how to actually get to something more essential in the portrait. So that way, you know, if you're working from life, whether you're making a drawing during a drawing competition or you're trying to sketch out your portrait, you have a basis to go from. That's the key. So the first step is to envelope. So this is just like what I call the total egg shape. You're just going around your subject and just giving yourself some boundaries. And the idea with boundaries is that you're creating a kind of outer limit. And that way you can start to measure and you can base things proportionally off of those limits. If you just go crazy and you start, you know, drawing an eye here, drawing a mouth there, and just start going, personally, I've found that that leads to a very complicated process with a lot of growing and shrinking of the portrait. So the idea is to set the limits so that you can begin to measure and be more strategic about it. And then you're going to mark the halfway point. So this is, you know, doesn't have to be perfect. There are some rules that are attached to this. Like, for example, the eyes can often be approximated using the halfway point. But what I find really helpful here is that you can start to segment and break the different sections of the face into smaller parts. So if we have this here, then I'm able to more easily identify, okay, how are the eye sockets falling into place here? You know, we can see, okay, the halfway line is going through here, so a little bit needs to be below, and we have the majority above, and I can start to break this down. So it's just helping to simplify. And it's pretty easy to approximate half of a distance. That's something we can do fairly accurately just with our own kind of estimation. You don't need to get a ruler out to be so precise. Sometimes working with a real portrait, I like to personally use my hands or use my paintbrush and just make sure, okay, these are pretty much the same top and bottom. And then you're in the kind of sweet spot, you're in a good range. Doesn't have to be down to the millimeter, but you're giving yourself that basis to work from. So then you're going to place the eye sockets. And the reason I like to start with eye sockets is, number one, they're kind of right in here in line with the halfway point. So you already have a pretty good reference for that. You can judge it pretty easily. And then it's also going to be very big. They're solid, and it's going to set the stage. So this is what I see as like the biggest thing you can do to start approximating how all of the features fit onto the face. And just for clarification here, as I go through this, these things are not, you're not necessarily drawing out all of this. You're giving yourself some indications, and you're doing this in a subtle way. So that way you can start to build on top of it. So it's not like, you see here I drew all this in. But what that looks like in reality, if you're using a Conte crayon, is just putting some subtle markers. So I kind of talked about this in some of my videos. I like to think of this as almost a secret indication. It's like something just for myself. It should be subtle so that I can keep track of it. But if somebody else were to come along and just like look over my shoulder, they probably wouldn't even see it. And it's the same idea. I mean, when painting, I would start out with white chalk, something like that. So then you could be a little bit more literal because you're going to come over it with paint. But then once you are actually painting, this would be a very subtle thing that you're doing. It's not like you're just totally covering this up with black or doing anything crazy here. And yeah, so if at any point here, guys, if something sounds weird, or if you want to jump in with questions about one of these steps in particular, feel free to jump in. We'll also do some questions at the end here. And we'll see, if it makes sense. If there's anything I need to clarify, I'm happy to do that. So then I would go on to the general nose structure. So I would kind of outline this area, and, again, very subtle. But the idea here is placing the boundaries of your features. So this is kind of like the same thing as we did for, enveloping the entire head. We kind of enveloped the eye sockets. We enveloped the nose. And now we know this is the area that the nose is going to fit within. So you're not worried about if you're making something too big or too small. It has to fit within about this size. It's just kind of simplifying everything to make it easier for yourself, so you're not trying to guess so much about the different parts. And then another useful measurement here, the nose is about 1/3 of the face. It varies. This is something online I always have to say is like, obviously this is not going to be perfectly the same for every single individual. People are unique. That's true. But it's a general rule you can work from, and it's going to be true most of the time. So the nose, you can see here, is this distance. It's like the bridge of the nose, the upper point right here. And, depending on the angle, it oftentimes will line up with the upper eyelid as well. So that could also be useful to be aware of. But then it goes all the way down to the bottom, and the bottom is, right at the tip of the nose, right at the bottom there. So with the scroll, that means this little bone here. I forget what that's called. But then you can measure. So you can base this to just make sure, again, things are kind of fitting into place. So I would use this then to measure, especially this area down here, because from the bottom here, the length of the nose down should be about the same size as the bottom of the nose to the chin. And that's an approximation, for some men in particular. Sometimes they'll have much bigger chins, so it will go, their chin will go beyond that, or if they have a beard or something like that. And then it's the forehead. The forehead is the other 1/3. So it's not 1/3 of the entire head. It's just 1/3 of the face. So when you have hair up here, that would be, covering up this area. Okay, and then moving down, the general kind of mouth structure. So this is just indications and something I like to do in order to, again, give myself some boundaries. So if you kind of put this in place, then it's easier, I think, to figure out how the mouth fits within that and how the rest of the structure comes into place. And if you notice also, this area right here with the chin and the upper part right here, this is going to protrude, it's going to stick out. And if you kind of indicate that for yourself, then it's good to keep that in mind. So you can just kind of mark that. And that way, as you start to go around, you have this kind of blocked out. Christine, see you raise your hand. Christine, do you have a question?
Yeah, just for the mouth, when you circle that the boundary, is that kind of like from the edge of the lip to the edge of the lip, or like?
No, it's
Like-
actually it's just a little bit beyond. It's kind of more about the light and shadow. So I would even say like it's more like the beard or the mustache. Like if you see me here, it's like just outside. So not like going into the line of it, but kind of right around it.
Okay, thanks.
And maybe it will become more clear with some of the next steps. And I have a demo that I've done about this that was kind of in the invite, but yeah, this one is a little bit difficult to explain on the skull because of course we don't have the mouth here. But I'll point that out in the next section when we do the one with the real portrait, so that way I can make sure that's more clear about kind of the indications I'm looking for. But it's generally about the light and shadow that will kind of cue you in. And the other thing is this chin here. So there's some very subtle changes in the chin. That's what also shapes the light and shadow. So that's something else I'm kind of looking for, because the chin really, it comes down here. And let me see, maybe it's easier if there's not drawing over top of it. Okay. So you see this section here? This comes kind of out more to a point, and this is not really flat once you get the muscle and the skin on there. But then you have these little marks, which are very indicative of the curve or the kind of way that the chin is bending back into space. So you have like this right here. I would consider this, one kind of movement. And then there's a very subtle turn at the jaw. So you have like just right here is another one. So I'm going to show that as we move on. But what I would do when I'm kind of circling is I would stay within this part right here. So I would go like here and then start to go up. So I would know kind of this right here where it starts to turn back. That's kind of the point where it would end on the bottom part here. It would be like this right here that I'm circling. And another useful measurement here. From the distance here, the bottom of the nose down to the chin, approximately 1/3 of the way down. That's where you find the mouth. And that can be the mouth line. Sometimes, it's just a little bit off from that. But you can use that to approximate. So that way okay, you've got enough space on the bottom, enough space on the top. You can start to put it in there. And the other thing I would look for, so the next step is to actually place the mouth. But what I would look for when I'm placing the mouth is this measurement, and I would look for the shadow. So the shadow under here is going to also cue you in on where this is at. So as you're placing the mouth, or as I'm placing the mouth, I should say, I'm not looking for details. I'm not trying to get it exact. I'm just looking for kind of this general value and where this falls in within this structure right here, this kind of previous circle that we made. So that's also why I'm doing this, is to give myself boundaries to help approximate the mouth. Okay, and then the cheek planes here. So this is very clear, I think, on a real portrait. I use the lines that are more accurate, I think, for a real portrait. So this is like where you'd find the eyes. It's going to be right here. But what you can do is you can follow the way that the light and the shadow is moving. And you have right here the zygomatic bone is going to give you a really nice indication of the edge. And then it's going to follow in here because we have muscle that sits right in here, but it's going to be a little bit recessed. So you're going to get more light, you know, here. You're going to get it on the cheekbone. You're going to get some more here because, as we mentioned, this area is protruding. And then the same thing on the shadow side. If you look at the light and shadow, you're going to be able to follow this around as well because you have some shadow that's going to come in here. You're going to have some light that goes under the eye here as well as the shadow under the eye. And then you're going to be able to follow the zygomatic bone and the edge of the face. And the shadow, again, is going to help to shape this. So like this triangular shape here is going to be pretty much shaped by light and shadow. And the other thing to keep in mind, so this is more useful for the mouth. And I noted here as well, like this is something I'm looking at visually, and I'm picturing this on the canvas or on my subject. I suppose you could draw it, but I wouldn't do it because it just gets messy. But this is something I'm kind of looking at visually. Is also, if I were to go all the way down to the chin and you make this little triangle here, there's some ways to kind of view these angles that helps with proportioning. So if you picture either the edge of the eye, this is one that's not on here, but from the edge of the eye here, and you go down to the corner of the mouth, that will come down to like a point here at the chin. So you can kind of triangulate this right here from the corner of the eye, you go down through the mouth to the chin. But the other part is that if you go from the edge of the zygomatic bone here, this is what I drew, you can go from the edge here and you'll get a nice triangle that's going to come down here and go to the chin. So you see this angle here. This is kind of something I look for. And it's not necessary to, you know, be literal about this. Again, this is a guideline. This is something personally that I found useful, especially when you have a limited amount of time or you're trying to do something to just get the solid structure in place. Then you can use this to work with, and you can use this as a kind of strategy in a way. That's maybe the way to put it. So it's more of a strategy than a specific formula or rule. So I would say take from this what makes sense to you and try to actually apply it, because you know, you can look at these things in different ways that make sense to you in order to approximate. And that's the idea with it, is that you're creating, you know, what you can see with these angles to help figure out how these different parts relate to each other. But the whole point here with this section is to put in a plane or kind of a value mass for the cheeks. So that would be like this triangle here. And that's what I'm looking at. And so that's what you see kind of mapped out here. It would look like this if I'm actually putting it on the canvas. You know, it's going to be more of a mid-tone, and it's just like this sort of triangle here. And it helps to fill in the space, helps you to approximate, and you're going to know what's going on with these other features. And then this step, the next step, is the chin and jaw. And if you look here, this is kind of how I broke it down. This is why I was talking about these little angles here, is because if you simplify this into these little geometric shapes, you can kind of figure out like, okay, if we go up to the mouth here, you know, this is pretty much going to be a solid mass here. And then as it rounds backwards in space, it's going to get slightly more gray and slightly darker. And then same, this area up here, instead of drawing the smile line, actually like putting a line here, you just make a subtle change in the color and in the value. And then I see, the chin is kind of a separate area. So I would kind of break down the chin here. And again, we have our mouth already approximated. So that helps with all of this to figure out what these shapes kind of look like. And then just this little area up above the mouth, which, it's rounding over. So you get this transition in value. So it's obviously, light to dark. But I think this is very helpful in order to figure out the way that the chin and jaw are actually curving backwards into space. They're curving around. And that way, this area needs to be lighter compared to this area. And same, over here, you're going to get a little bit of light typically in here. And this area, as it goes back, it's going to be a deeper shadow. And maybe you're going to get a little bit of reflective light on the edge. But you know how to then bend it in space so that it feels like it's actually, three-dimensional. So this is what it looks like with some kind of indications. This is not, it's not true for value. This is something I drew to pass on to an illustrator and to also just get this kind of rough block in going so I could explain myself. But it still gives the idea here of what these sections look like. So if you notice, how I described, like this is kind of one section. This over here is kind of one section. Then you've got right here above the mouth. And you've got like this little area, which you don't need to map this out. As I said, you're not literally drawing a line here, but it helps visually to picture this kind of triangle. So that way you can separate these different areas. And, typically like in this area, you're going to get some highlight right under the nose. It's going to be a little bit more yellow. So that's the type of thing you'd be paying attention to, is kind of the color shift as well. So there's some subtleties there where mapping it out can kind of give you a guide to your own strategies or techniques, that kind of thing. You're gonna be able to remember more easily. Oh yeah, this area needs to be more yellow, more red, whatever the case may be. And then the forehead. The forehead is a lot more simple because this is just like our sphere shape. But if you have hair, it's more complicated. You typically have more going on, and you might be confused by it. And that's why I think it's useful to just try to see what areas are similar, what areas kind of look like they have the same value, anything like that, and just block it out and just draw them into simple geometric shapes. So this is like a very crude version of that. But as I mentioned earlier, the hair is obviously, it's not going to be on the very top of the head. It's going to be somewhere down here, and you're going to get the forehead. But you can block out these areas just to simplify that. And then finally, it's the light and shadow. So looking at the highlights, that's going to help with proportions. It's going to help to make it look like the person. And the key highlights, if you're going to be using Rembrandt lighting, you're going to have one up here on the forehead, somewhere in here. You might get something on the eye socket right here. It's not going to be as bright as this. You're going to get a little bit of light there. You're going to get a bright highlight on the cheek, or the cheekbone, I should say. And right here, you can get a good one. Or it's just going to be lighter, and you're going to have, usually a very prominent highlight on the nose. And something in here. Not as bright, though. This should be a little bit more subtle compared to like your cheek or your forehead. And these other, like this orange stuff here, that was just to indicate some midtones. So, with Rembrandt lighting, this is going to help to shape the form. You're going to have some light coming down here. And as we talked about, this section is a little bit closer to us. This section is receding. So the light's going to kind of bend over that. And then you're going to have the triangle of light here on the shadow side. And the shadows, finally. So here's like the key shadows that I would be looking for with the shaping. You have the nose, something in the eye socket here is going to help to start kind of mapping out the eye. Then you have this along the side is crucial. This is like the classic Rembrandt lighting that everybody would think of is right here under the nose and on the side here. And then you can also look at, you're going to get some subtle shadows generally kind of under the chin, right here on the side near the jaw, and potentially around the mouth. That's pretty much it. Yeah, I guess also the eye shape I included here, so that would be like the final thing that I would consider to still be a part of the block-in. I would just kind of map out approximately where the eyes should go. So it's not anything detailed here. It's just kind of where should they fit within the whole eye socket, and that way you've got something to move forward with. So it's not detailed, but this is kind of what that looks like. Just putting some kind of midtone in there. And what I call this is really like a placeholder. It's really just something to hold the space so you can visually see what's going on and compare these different parts. But it's not like you're actually drawing the eye at this point. You're just trying to map it out, trying to measure these things proportionally. And yeah, the conclusion, you got to practice. You got to practice, of course. That's important. But the reason I made this is just so you guys could see visually how I'm thinking about this process, right? I'm trying to simplify it and to break it down and make the portrait into these more fundamental shapes. So that way you can move quicker and actually, I think, more accurately. And then you're not reliant on trying to measure with a photograph or something like that or whatever. It's really just developing a more fundamental understanding of the key features of a portrait. So with that was a lot. That was a lot. But does anybody have questions? Any quick questions before we move on to the real portrait? This is the real portrait, by the way. It's this wonderful drawing by Edward Munch.
I have a suggestion for if you're going to continue to update the guide.
Uh-huh.
I think someplace in there it might be nice if you did a really short section on what is a value map.
Okay.
How do you make one and why they're useful?
Okay. Anything else? Anybody think of anything else?
I have a question, but maybe
Yeah.
it might be answered in the next section, so
Okay.
you can let me know.
Yeah, let me know.
But just as you're mapping out the major like shapes and darks and shadows,
Mhm.
are you keeping in mind likeness throughout, or is that you're kind of like not thinking about that yet?
At a certain point, like especially once you get into light and shadow, I think that's more so when the likeness comes in. And when you're mapping out the features, then you're gonna notice the difference. So like I was saying with like the nose, for example, there's some rules with this that you can use it as a relative measurement. And so that's kind of how I would view it more so. Rather than trying to make this perfect according to the rule, I would see how it lines up with the portrait I'm dealing with or the subject I'm dealing with. So maybe you find the nose is, occupying this space, but if you measure down, the chin is actually like right here, and the nose is longer than the chin. And so that would be the type of thing, I think, where you'd start to develop likeness and where you could kind of alter it accordingly. There is a benefit, I think, to also just knowing some of these rules because you can use that to just make slight alterations. And that might be something, further on down the road. It's not like, you're necessarily worried about that right away. Right away, you got to make sure you're understanding the foundations and maybe practicing more with working from life, that kind of thing. But further on down the road, kind of the ultimate goal is to flatter your model. And that's where it becomes really useful to have, a good sense of both, where you can see the differences, but you can actively choose to make some small alterations. Did that answer your question,
Yeah,
Christine?
thank you.
Yeah. Okay. And so, yeah, I mean, the other thing I would say is throughout all this, you're really developing their kind of unique structure, because you're going to see, as you're placing these things, there's going to be very small changes, and those kind of build up throughout this whole sort of block in. And it doesn't take a lot to get somebody's likeness. The interesting thing, I think, is that it's actually really easy to do it if you follow some kind of block-in strategy, something where you're getting the general shape. I think it makes it really, really easy, because then you're getting the big features, or the big likeness, so to speak. It's like, yeah, I don't know, kind of the 80-20 rule, or however you want to think of it. It's like you're putting in the generalized, broadest sense of likeness, and therefore you don't have to be worried about minute details. All right. Anything else that anybody's thinking about? I'm taking notes here, so I'll kind of include these things maybe in a video or in this. So yeah, feel free to jump in.
It's kind of a question, but maybe it's also just a useful thing to put out there. It's kind of implied here and in the next book as well, with the monk drawing that's used as a reference, that this is the orientation of the skull is dead on, which is quite uncommon in portraiture, but very useful for this example, because
Yeah,
you can
gotcha.
have this linear proportion of thirds and sixes and the
Right.
planes and symmetry.
Gotcha.
So it might help if there's like different orientations of the skull, maybe at the end or something. So if you do these kind of exercises, starting with the simplest possible thing, like dead on, you can then modify it, because it's very difficult to do this if it isn't front on, if you're just starting out.
Yeah. No, that's a really good point. Is that Evan?
Yeah, that's Evan. I'm just a bit
Awesome.
quiet because it's like 2 or 3 in the morning here.
Oh my
So
gosh.
sorry
Yeah.
if you can't hear me.
No, you're the man for showing up. Thanks for showing up.
No worries.
That's a really good point. Yeah. So what I would say is that this is a really good basis to go from. And the measurements, again, it's not necessarily like it has to line up in that way. But what I would do from any perspective is to still use the same relative measurements. So considering, like, especially the nose, that's something, no matter what the angle of the head is, like if they're tilted down, they're tilted up, you can measure and you can approximate, okay, this is about the size of the nose. How does that compare to the forehead? How does that compare to the lower part? And you can use their own features as your basis to measure. So that's something I think is extremely helpful. The other part is the light and shadow. It's going to, of course, it's bending around the face, but then it's going to create some of these shapes, and they're just kind of skewed according to the perspective. So a lot of the rules, I think, remain true, but it's a good point. Very good point, Evan. I'll try to include something else for the future. I'll put that in the plans to include like at least 3/4 and profile, because those are, I mean, super standard. Awesome. So if anybody else, if you want to jump in, feel free to raise your hand. I guess that's that's a cool feature. So feel free to raise your hand. That way I'll just see it here, and then I can jump in and answer whatever questions you have. But if everybody's good to go, this is how it relates to an actual portrait. It's the same thing, same principle. I haven't changed the text for this, so it's the same thing, same process. Everything is the same, but this is how it would relate to an actual portrait. And I use this Munch example because I think it's really wonderful how you can see the underlying structure here. You can see the skull, even though it is such a subtle drawing. Like there's really nice gradation here with the values. So the first thing, envelope. When you have a real subject, you can kind of start to manipulate according to what you're seeing. So, if somebody had gigantic hair, let's say, or a gigantic beard, something like that, something that's really going to skew your shape in one direction or another, then you'd want to keep that in mind. So it's not like it has to be just the skull you're putting there. You can start to get the whole shape no matter what they look like. And the halfway point. So this one, you can see it kind of lines up with the eyes. That's very helpful. The eye sockets. So when you're looking at the eye sockets, there's some really great indications that you'll be able to see. And I encourage you guys to look at this, even even if you're just hanging out with a friend or something. Maybe you want to clue them in if they are looking at you like you're studying them too much in detail. But you'll start to notice when you look at people, you can really pick out the eye socket pretty easily, and it's based on the light and shadow, and you'll be able to see, like, even if they don't have really deep bags under their eyes or something like that, you'll be able to see you're going to get some light here on the cheekbone. You're going to get some light here inside the eye socket, or shadow, either way. And there's going to be these indications, like right here, you're going to have, the brow ridge is coming up here, but the upper part of the eyelid and the eye socket is going to go around the eye. So do you see that here with this shadow? And you have the highlight here, brow ridge here. So you can kind of map the eye socket just visually by looking at people. I think that's pretty cool. Right. Diana, what did you share? Is that a three-dimensional model or something?
No, what I shared was what I said I was going to share is Eleanor Crook's website, The Sculptor,
Oh, okay.
and then the Morbid Anatomy website.
Okay, very cool. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. No, but there is a 3D modeling app for the iPhone.
Mm. Do you know
It's very
what it's
cool.
called?
No, but I'll find it and send it to you, because you can take all the body parts and rotate them 360 degrees. It's very cool.
That is really cool. I wonder if I think I had something like that back in the day. I did have that at one point.
Yeah,
but
I'll get them together and send them to you.
Awesome, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So that could be really useful, yeah, for anybody who's kind of wanting to go more in depth in some of the angles. There's some 3D models out there where you can get like your good Rembrandt lighting, and then you can turn the skull to any angle, so you can really see it 360 and map these things out. Art anatomy. Okay, thank you, Sonika. That's one. All right, so the eye sockets. Does that make sense, what I'm talking about? Have you guys ever noticed that? Has anybody noticed that? You can really see the eye sockets if you're looking for it. Right.
Yeah, I'm very guilty of staring at people I know and studying their faces.
Yeah, I do that all the time. That's good stuff. Good stuff. All right, so then the nose structure. So again, I've got the skull here. So when I send this to you guys, just so you know, in the previous one, I was showing like step by step, so you can see the previous step up here in the corner. But now I've got the skull here. So this is how it lines up with what we were just looking at. And if I zoom in a little bit, you see here, it's kind of the bottom of the nose, and then it's up here to the bridge. So usually you're going to have a pretty good indication, because number one, you have the curve of the eye socket, but then you also have some light and shadow here that will tell you basically where that's ending. And it doesn't have to be perfect. As long as you're kind of aware of this while you're measuring, then you can figure out how things are lining up. But if we look at it here, this is kind of the measurements that we're looking for. And I might have, I think maybe I drew this so that this is like where it should be, maybe is right here. And I think maybe the previous step, it was a little bit too high up where I drew it. Eric, good to see you. Thanks for coming. Take care. I'll see you soon.
Thank you. Yeah, see you soon.
All right. So then the mouth structure is the next thing. And that's, again, kind of based on this, we can approximate, we can figure out relatively, okay, how does this lower area match up with what we just figured out with the nose. We can approximate the mouth again. This is like kind of the 1/3 rule. So here, you know, it's not exactly on the line where you're gonna have the mouth. This is a really beautiful expression. There's a lot of stuff packed into this drawing, but the corners almost line up right here with this line. And this is not perfect, here. I didn't use a ruler for this, but that's the idea anyways. And then when I'm drawing out the mouth, what I would look for, this is a little bit better idea of what this looks like. You've got this nice kind of gradation with the lips. And so I would kind of map out the lips just by how they look and the, you know, change in color and value, but not looking at the details of it. You know, I'm not trying to figure out exactly what the blending looks like. It's just the general shape. So maybe something, you know, like a rich mid-tone, something with some red maybe, like it's hard to describe the color, but it would be like a kind of mid-tone flesh color plus red. That's what I would kind of mix up and use for this. So that way it's consistent for pretty much all of this shape, and then you're just going to add your light and shadow, and it's not going to muddy your colors. So it's rich, that way it's not getting muddy. Then you're going to have this shadow down here. That's going to help to show you where the outer limits are, kind of on the bottom part. He has very small lips, but if you were to have, you know, bigger lips coming down here, for example, you'd obviously just kind of mark the bottom lip and you'd look for this shadow here. It's going to be very clear to tell you where the chin starts and where the mouth is transitioning. Okay, and then the cheek planes. So here, maybe I'll show it on this. Maybe it doesn't matter. But you can see like this here. This is the edge of the face, and we see like this right here, this zygomatic bone is just popping out right there, and same over here. Really see the structure here. So that's how I would kind of map it out. It's just according to this. So if you picture like right here, there's a lot of ways you could do this, but simplifying it into a geometric shape. That's the idea. And you could line this up with the eyes. That can be helpful. That's what I was talking about earlier with the skull, where it didn't quite make sense that it's cutting across there, but it's more practical when you're working with portraits. It's really going to come up here. And this is kind of where you get the edge of the zygomatic bone, and then it's going to start to curve. So that's the idea. Oops. Okay. And then the planes down here. So if you notice, this is how I would kind of break it up, is like this one that we talked about. Right here, just to the side of the chin, this is going to have a particular angle where it's curving back. And then one more. There's one more right here where you start to get the jaw. So I would break that up. And if it's necessary, you know, you could look at what's going on over here. Maybe they've got hair coming down. Maybe this is bending in a particular way, or you get some shadow over here. Whatever the case may be, you know, this is where the flexibility is that you can use that according to what you're seeing with your model. But I would look for these angles here, especially. You have the chin, and then it starts to bend backwards with the jaw. So it's good to be aware of that. And the hair, so you can see here, this is quite different. Like if you look at the model versus here, you're just looking for sections of light, shadow, and same with the hair. You want to break the hair into these geometric shapes. And the highlights, this one's more rough drawing, but Monk's already done it for us. Monk's already done it for us. So you can see, you know, like the key highlights I was talking about, you have the forehead, cheekbone here, something on the nose, or the inner part of the eye socket. And then you're going to get this mid-tone over here on the shadow side. And the shadows. So, oh yeah, okay. Here's a better indication with the Rembrandt lighting. These are like all the key lights that I was talking about. forehead, cheekbone, eye socket, nose. Those are all very important, and you're typically going to have some kind of light here. Okay, and then the shadows. So the shadows are typically going to be more obvious, maybe, but it's like the classic Rembrandt lighting, where you get the nose, the shadow over here on the cheek, and just pay attention right in here with the mouth, that kind of area. That will just help with the shape, getting the likeness, all the good stuff. Love Lucretia. Me too, Evan. That one is fantastic. It's fantastic. Those some of those Rembrandts, they're so easy to kind of identify what's going on. It's fantastic. Madalena, hello. Hello. Sorry if the time change was a curveball for you, Madalena. Or excuse me, yeah, Madalena. Okay.
No problem. Thank you, Nick.
This is recorded, so I'll send you the recording. Yeah, and if anybody has questions, I do have to go here pretty soon, but I'd be happy to cover any questions before I go. Does this kind of make sense, at least as far as like the general structure and some key points to look for? Yeah. Okay. I know it's a lot. This was a lot. There's a lot going on, but I would really encourage you to, practice this and try to start looking for these things. That's something we're gonna do with the block-in bootcamp. So block-in bootcamp is a go. I will be gone this coming weekend, next weekend, for a workshop in New York. But then as soon as I'm back, I'll be ready to go full steam ahead with block-in bootcamp. So I'll be thinking about that the whole time, kind of to get a general structure, and maybe I'll send that out to you guys for some ideas about the dates. But I would like to do it. Yeah, I mean, potentially even starting that Monday or Tuesday. Let's see. Let me check my calendar so I can tell you what those dates are. But perhaps the 19th, something like that, I would like to start. So for everybody to be aware of, I would really like to, yeah, try it out, see how it goes, and hopefully get something helpful for you guys with the block-in bootcamp. Thank you, Chloe.
Nick,
this was super informative. Appreciate it.
when you say you want us to practice, do you want us to practice from the guide, or do you want us to take a particular portrait and try to do it on that? Are we all going to do the same one? How do you want us to approach this?
I would say, in the meantime, if you're looking for something to do, then I would say, take the guide and test it out. See how this applies to the real world and to your own practice. And see if there's anything, that you can make it like slightly altered to fit more towards your needs. Because, like I said, this is just what I found works for me. There's a million ways to block in a portrait and a million strategies. But this is what I found to be helpful and pretty consistently true.
Well, given that you're the professor and we're the students, I think I'm going to try it your way.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So yeah, I'll have some more specific things mapped out. Like we're gonna do some that I have in mind with practicing with Masterworks. I'd like to look at this Munch drawing again together with everyone, but there's some other drawings and paintings I have in mind, and some exercises as far as yeah, actually carrying out like the blocking process.
So are you going to send us an assignment to draw while you're gone, or are we going to make up our own?
Let me think about it. Let me think about it.
Okay.
I'll try to, first of all, get this in a good PDF form so that way you guys have this to work with.
Okay.
And so that's number one priority for me first. And this week is going to be pretty busy for me, but I will be thinking about it. So I'll talk to you, Diana. I'll talk to you because I know you're eager to go.
I can
Um,
make an amusement, not to worry. Don't worry, don't stress.
Okay. I'll throw some ideas around though. I'll throw some ideas around and see what makes sense. Because I also want to save a few of my cards for the block-in bootcamp when we're doing the real thing, if that's all right.
Sure.
Okay. Looks like everybody was commenting. Thank you. Chloe, thank you. Sonika, thank you. Really glad. Okay. Glad you guys enjoyed this. And yeah, I hope this is helpful. Madalena, anybody else?
Nick, I want to ask you something about time. As I understand now that I want to ask you if you changed the time of starting this live because in the email it was 10 in your time, and in my time it is 6 p.m.
Yeah, there's today in the United States was time change, and it's very frustrating every year when this happens because it's different in different parts of the world and in Europe, and it's a weird thing. So I'm sorry that you missed it.
But it is only in this day, or
yeah, until the fall. So it will be consistent now
I
until the fall.
understand. So,
but if you look up, I'm in Central Standard Time, USA. So if you look that up and look at how that changes to your time on Google, it will tell you like the direct.
Yeah, but I looked up and Google said that this time is like in my time 6 p.m.
Yeah, that was unfortunate because I sent out the email like I don't know how to do it different, but for now, for the next 6 months, you should be good to go. At this time now, it should be the same time difference.
Okay, thank you, Nick. Thank you.
You're welcome, and yeah, you'll get the recording. So
at
least
thank
you'll have
you,
the
Nick.
recording. Yes.
Thank you.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Thank you, everybody, for coming.
Bye. Take care.
I have to run, but yeah, I hope this was helpful, and I will see you all soon for Block-in Bootcamp. Thank you very much. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks, Nick. See ya.